Knowing this statistic, recognizing this high failure rate, this is the kind of moral issue that gets under our skin, whether you're pro-death penalty or anti-death penalty. Over the past decade, I have brought to my campus numerous exonerated death row inmates, persons who had absolutely nothing to do with the crime for which they were sentenced to death. Their stories of spending 10, 15, 23 years on death row shakes our students' confidence in the death sentence. Also, what varies tremendously from state to state is how you handle these. Juan Melendez was the first speaker I brought to campus who was an exonerated death row inmate. I think it was 22, 23 years he spent on death row. When he was released, he was given a new pair of jeans and a new white t-shirt and bus ticket money. He never received a penny in compensation for those 23 years that devastated his life. The number of exonerated death row inmates is currently at 142. The book is wrong. It says it at 141, because anytime you give a speech or publish something within a few weeks, there's another one, all right? So now it's 142. As Governor Ryan of Illinois, a strong death penalty supporter, he studied the procedures and problematic aspects of the death penalty sentencing in Illinois. And as he studied it and became educated, he grew so morally troubled that in 2003, the night before he left office, he commuted the sentences of all 167 death row inmates to life before he left office. He said he couldn't live with himself knowing the risk of executing innocent persons. And that was the beginning of the movement to repeal. In 2011, Illinois repealed. This is the issue which most troubles people, but the practice of the death penalty raises lots of additional concerns. Those who support the death penalty, they want it to be an ultimate punishment which is reserved for the most heinous offenders, applied in a fair and consistent manner without bias or inhumane cruelty. And they believe, or they hope it is, or can become so. But the more we learn about the practice, the more we become morally troubled. A 2011 study released on the 35th anniversary of the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976 cataloged the factors of race, geographical location, money, and by that they mean the class, the financial status of the person who is charged with a capital crime, and also the county budget in the locale in which they're charged. That's what money means. And other arbitrary aspects of this system. And they concluded that the death penalty continues to be applied in an arbitrary, inconsistent, and unfair way. And I'm going to just note a few of the dimensions of this. Social scientific research reveals a consistent link between the application of the death penalty and race. Numerous studies have shown that the race of the defendant, and increasingly the race of the victim, matters greatly in terms of who is charged, who is tried for a capital crime, who is eventually sentenced to death, and who is ultimately executed. Retired Supreme Court Justice Stevens recently commented on statistical evidence on race and the death penalty, and he noted, these are his words, that the murder of a black victim is treated as less culpable than the murder of a white victim. This provides a haunting reminder of the once prevalent Southern lynchings. A white person killing a black person, or a white person, or a black person killing a black person will be treated very differently than a black person killing a white person. That combination is what increases the chances of a death sentence. So race definitely matters. Raymond Paternoster, who's a very prominent scholar from the University of Maryland, he's a sociologist, provides a very detailed study evidencing that those who kill whites are treated more harshly at virtually every stage of the criminal justice process compared with those who kill non-whites. Also, the death penalty proportionately affects defendants with less income and less education. And in America, race and social class overlap. Minorities, the poor, and the less educated are significantly more at risk of being executed. So race matters, class matters, education matters. Geographical location also matters very greatly. In our federal system, some states execute, some states don't, and for the exact same crimes. So it very much depends on what state you're in. In states, inside states, the county matters greatly. For example, and this is a pattern throughout the country, in Maryland, if you are charged with an identical crime, it is only likely that you will get a capital case in 2 counties, Baltimore County and Howard County, and only because there are 1 or 2 prosecutors in those jurisdictions who seek the death penalty. So the seeking of the death penalty is a matter of geographical location and prosecutorial discretion. It is up to the prosecutor whether to seek. In a case that is capital eligible, they have to decide whether to seek. Even in states that frequently execute, Florida, Texas, and Virginia, sentencing occurs in a very small number of counties, so geographical location matters. Also, quality of defense matters. More than 2/3 of the people recently sentenced to death have had their convictions or sentences reversed because it was recognized that they didn't have a fair trial due to inadequate counsel. They were too poor to hire a very good, experienced lawyer. Access to adequate defense is one of the most significant aspects influencing capital sentencing. Those who have the capital for a private defense do not get capital punishment. And I'm going to give you an example of someone from California who I've met many times. Bill Babbitt of California can tell us a lot about this situation. He often speaks with David Kaczynski. Now you might recognize the name David Kaczynski, the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, that's his brother. Oh. Both turned their brothers in out of fear that they had committed a crime. Manny Babbitt, Bill's brother, was a highly decorated Vietnam veteran Marine. And he was diagnosed with what we would call now PTS. All right, it was recognized he was in and out of mental hospitals upon his return. He was given a death sentence after being convicted in a case of the death of a woman who died from a heart attack subsequent to a robbery. So he wasn't involved in the killing of her, but the trauma of it resulted in her having a heart attack. All right? And he got a death sentence. Ted Kaczynski was sentenced to life without parole after plotting carefully and carrying out bomb threats against a number of persons that terrorized the whole country. But his brother David could fund his defense, and he repeatedly argues, he often speaks with Bill Babbitt together, and he says, death sentencing is a matter of race and class. David had the resources to hire skilled private lawyers and to fund an adequate defense. Bill had to rely on poorly funded, tremendously overworked public defenders who in many cases, even if they are skilled lawyers, because of their workload and resources that are available to them, cannot provide adequate counsel. Supreme Court Justice Douglas noted, "One searches in vain for the execution of any member of the affluent strata in this society. People with capital do not get capital punishment." So money matters. So these are some of the moral concerns on a practical level. But the theoretical concerns remained in the end. Even if we could afford the death penalty, even if we could amend the practice, right, eliminating all of these inconsistencies, biases, unfairness, if we could do that, would it be a moral practice? We often frame the theoretical moral issue in terms of, do people deserve to die for the capital crimes they've committed? And this is a very sensible question. But another way of framing the issue is, do we deserve to kill? To have the state execute in our name with our tax dollars? Many people are not aware of this, but on a death certificate, you have to list a cause of death. And the cause of death that is listed on a death certificate following executions, it's listed as a homicide. Cause of death is homicide. It is a state homicide. So ought we to commit homicide in response to homicide? Social scientists maintain there is not enough evidence to support the deterrent value of the death penalty. So it seems the only remaining theoretical justification is that the death penalty is a matter of just retribution. Justice demands that we execute certain people. Immanuel Kant, you've probably studied him in some of your philosophy classes, he clearly presented such retributive thinking. He said very bluntly, if you kill, you must die. Simply as a matter of punishment, it is the right thing to do, and that's why we should do it. But if we followed Kant's reasoning, we would be continuously executing in this country. In 2010, there were 16,259 homicides. So that would entail a lot of executions. But over time, we have narrowed, slowly, the kinds of crimes that are eligible for death sentences. And we have tried to restrict them to the most heinous of crimes, at least we think.